Someone wronged you, they betrayed you, they stabbed you in the back, they destroyed something you built, and now you want revenge. But here's what you're about to do wrong. You're going to react emotionally. You're going to strike back immediately. You're going to make them hurt the way they made you hurt, and you're going to destroy yourself in the process. Let me tell you something that Niccolò Machiavelli understood 500 years ago. Perfect revenge is not hot, it's cold. Perfect revenge is not immediate, it's patient. Perfect revenge is not visible, it's invisible. Perfect revenge is not about making yourself feel better. It's about making them suffer in ways they cannot escape, cannot defend against, cannot even prove is happening. The amateur wants satisfaction now. The master wants destruction later. The amateur wants to be seen delivering justice. The master wants the target to destroy themselves while never knowing who orchestrated it. The amateur burns with rage. The master freezes with calculation. Tonight, I'm going to show you the Machiavellian principles of perfect revenge. The psychological warfare techniques that make your enemy unravel without ever connecting it to you. The long-game strategies that turn their own actions against them. The invisible methods that leave no evidence, no witnesses, no trail back to you. But I need to warn you. What I'm about to teach you is dangerous. Once you understand these principles, you will see opportunities for revenge everywhere. You will have to exercise enormous restraint not to use this knowledge on every minor offense. This is nuclear-level power. Use it only when conventional options have failed. Use it only when the wrong was severe enough to justify what you're about to do. Before we talk about what perfect revenge looks like, you need to understand why the revenge you're planning right now will destroy you. Because right now, you're angry. You're hurt, and that emotional state is going to lead you into a trap. Emotional revenge is when you act from feeling rather than strategy. When you're driven by the need to make them hurt right now. When you want them to know it was you. When satisfaction is more important than success. This is how people end up in prison. This is how people ruin their own reputations. Emotional revenge feels good for about 30 seconds. Then it feels terrible for years. Here's what happens when you take emotional revenge. First, you reveal yourself. You make it obvious that you're the one who did it, because you want credit. But the moment they know it was you, you've lost tactical advantage. Now they can respond. Now they can defend. Now they can strike back. Second, you act too soon. You're angry now, so you want revenge now. But acting immediately means you haven't planned properly. You're improvising based on emotion, and improvisation fails against someone who has time to prepare their defense. Third, you make it proportional. They hurt you this much, so you hurt them this much. But balanced revenge is weak revenge, because they know what you're going to do. They can predict it. They can minimize the damage. Fourth, you do something illegal, unethical, or socially unacceptable. You slash their tires, you spread lies, you publicly humiliate them, and now you've given them ammunition. Now they're the victim. Now you're the aggressor. The person who wronged you is not lying awake at night worrying about what you'll do. They've moved on. They've forgotten about you, and if you take emotional revenge, you're giving them exactly what they want. Confirmation that they got to you. Confirmation that they have power over you. Here's the brutal truth. If you cannot control your emotions long enough to plan strategically, you have already lost. They have already won. Because they have turned you into someone who acts from weakness, from pain, from desperation. Now we get into the principles that separate amateurs from masters. These are the non-negotiable rules of perfect revenge. Principle 1. Distance. Perfect revenge creates maximum distance between you and the outcome. The ideal revenge is one where they suffer, you benefit, and no one can trace any connection between their suffering and your actions. You want degrees of separation. You want layers of plausible deniability. You want it to look like bad luck, their own mistakes, natural consequences, anything except deliberate revenge. Principle 2. Patience. Perfect revenge operates on a timeline measured in months or years, not days or weeks. You wait for the right moment. You wait for them to be vulnerable. You wait for circumstances to align. Amateurs strike when they're ready. Masters strike when the target is unprepared. The longer you wait, the less they suspect you. The longer you wait, the more careless they become. Principle 3. Invisibility. Perfect revenge is invisible. They should never know that what's happening to them is revenge. They should think it's bad luck, their own mistakes. When revenge is invisible, there's no defense. When they don't know they're under attack, they can't protect themselves. This requires extreme discipline, because you want them to know. You want credit, but that desire for recognition is ego, and ego destroys perfect revenge. Principle 4. Indirection. Perfect revenge never strikes where they expect. It doesn't target them directly. It targets what they value, their relationships, their reputation, their opportunities. You don't attack the person. You attack the ecosystem around them and let that ecosystem turn against them. Principle 5. Multiplication. Perfect revenge creates damage that multiplies over time rather than damage that happens once. One-time revenge gives them a chance to recover. Multiplying revenge ensures that consequences keep expanding, keep compounding, keep creating new problems that cascade into more problems. Principle 6. Deniability. Perfect revenge maintains perfect deniability. Even if they suspect you, they cannot prove it. You're always one step removed, always protected by layers of separation, always able to say, "I had nothing to do with that," and have it be technically true. Principle 7. Self-destruction. The most perfect revenge is one where you create conditions for them to destroy themselves. You don't destroy them, they destroy themselves. You just set up the dominoes. They're the ones who knock them over. Now we get into specific methods. These are the strategies that create maximum damage with minimum risk. Method 1. The long reputation erosion. You don't attack their reputation directly. You plant seeds of doubt that grow over time. You never say anything negative about them. Never. But you ask questions, strategic questions that make others doubt them. Has anyone else noticed that John's numbers don't quite add up? Not an accusation, just a question. These questions make other people start looking for problems. And when other people find problems, it's not your accusation, it's their observation. This takes months, sometimes years, but when their reputation finally crumbles, they'll never trace it back to your carefully planted questions. Method 2. The opportunity interception. You don't hurt them. You just prevent them from winning. Every time they're about to get something good, something happens to block it. They're up for a promotion? You mention to the decision-maker some concerns you've heard from others. They're about to close a big deal? You introduce their client to someone who offers a better option. You're not attacking them. You're just being in the right place at the right time. The cumulative effect is that they can't seem to catch a break, and they have no idea why. Method 3. The alliance erosion. You don't attack them directly, but you quietly turn their allies into neutrals and their neutrals into opponents. You befriend their allies. You're helpful. You're trustworthy. Over time, they start seeing you as more reliable than the person who wronged you. Simultaneously, you share information that makes them question their alliance. Not accusations, just facts. Over time, the alliances weaken, and when they eventually face a crisis and need their allies, they discover their allies aren't as committed as they thought. Method 4. The success poison. This is where you help them succeed in ways that will eventually destroy them. You give them rope to hang themselves. You encourage them to take on more than they can handle. You support their most ambitious but least realistic plans, and when they inevitably fail because they overextended, it looks like their own hubris, not your sabotage. This requires patience and precision. You have to genuinely help them at first. You have to make them trust you. You have to make them see you as a supporter, not an enemy. And then you guide them toward the cliff while they think they're heading toward the summit. Method 5. The environmental pressure. You don't attack them, but you systematically increase the stress and pressure in their environment until they crack. You make their job harder. You make their relationships more complicated. You make their daily life more difficult. not in ways they can point to, in ways that just accumulate. Small things, repeated things, information that arrives just slightly late, support that's just slightly inadequate, resources that are just slightly insufficient. None of it is dramatic. All of it is corrosive. Over time, they're operating in a high-stress environment where nothing quite works right. And under that stress, people make mistakes. They become irritable. They damage their own relationships. They self-destruct. Method 6. The information drip. This is where you have damaging information about them, but instead of using it all at once, you release it slowly over time. Little bits here and there. Different sources, different contexts. You don't release the information yourself. You create situations where others discover it. You leave documents where they'll be found. You mention things to people who will mention them to other people. And you space it out. One piece of information creates doubt. Another piece 6 months later creates concern. Another piece a year later creates conviction. By the time the full picture emerges, they're destroyed, but the destruction happens so gradually and from so many different sources that they can't point to a single attacker. These methods work because they're invisible, patient, and indirect. They follow the principles we established. They create damage that multiplies over time. They maintain perfect deniability, and they turn the target's own actions and environment against them. Now we go into psychological warfare, the tactics that make them question their own sanity. Tactic 1. Strategic inconsistency. Sometimes you're warm and helpful. Sometimes you're cold and unavailable. The inconsistency creates anxiety because they can't predict you. They can't figure out where they stand with you. And that uncertainty is psychologically corrosive. You're warm when they expect cold. You're cold when they expect warm. The pattern is that there is no pattern. Tactic 2. The gaslighting observations. You make them doubt their own memory and perception. They remember you saying something. You have no memory of that. They remember an event one way. You remember it differently. I never said that. That's not how I remember it. Are you sure that happened? These phrases, deployed strategically, make people question their own reality. Tactic 3. The phantom alliance. You make them think you're aligned with them while actually working against them. You're sympathetic. You're supportive. They think you're on their side, but you're collecting information and using it against them. Every conversation where they vent to you is information about their vulnerabilities, and somehow their competitors know their strategies. Somehow their weaknesses get exploited, and they never suspect you because you are so supportive. Tactic 4. The manufactured coincidence. You create patterns that seem like coincidence but are actually deliberate. They mention a problem. A few days later, that problem gets worse through circumstances that seem unrelated to you. They express a fear. That fear comes true in a way that seems like bad luck. The pattern creates a sense that the universe is against them. They don't suspect deliberate sabotage because the connections aren't obvious. This is advanced manipulation. It requires careful timing and execution. But when done correctly, it creates a psychological state where they feel powerless against forces they can't identify or control. And that powerlessness is devastating. Tactic 5. The subtle exclusion. You don't overtly exclude them, but you create a subtle sense that they're on the outside. Conversations that stop when they approach. Inside jokes they don't understand. References to events they weren't invited to, a sense that there's an inner circle and they're not in it. You're not rude, you're not hostile, you're perfectly polite. But there's a coolness, a distance, and this creates paranoia. Are people talking about them? Are they being excluded deliberately? They can't prove anything, but the feeling gnaws at them. Over time, this erodes their confidence and their social standing. Tactic 6. The comparison amplification. You don't attack them directly, but you amplify comparisons between them and others who are doing better. You mention how well someone else is doing. You praise others in front of them. Did you see how quickly Sarah closed that deal? Mike's presentation was incredible. You're not saying they're underperforming. You're just highlighting that others are performing well, but the implicit comparison is clear. And if they're already struggling, This creates a sense of inadequacy that compounds their problems. These psychological tactics work because they operate below the level of explicit attack. You're not doing anything that could be called hostile. You're just creating psychological conditions that erode confidence, create anxiety, and amplify stress. And the beauty is that the damage is self-inflicted. You create the conditions. They create the harm through their own psychological responses. Now we need to talk about control. Because perfect revenge requires knowing when to stop, when to escalate, and when to abandon the mission entirely. First, establish clear objectives. What does success look like? What level of damage is sufficient? Without clear objectives, revenge becomes an endless obsession that consumes you more than it harms them. Define the endpoint before you begin. And once you've achieved your objective, you stop, immediately, completely, permanently. Second, monitor for unintended consequences. Revenge always has ripple effects. Sometimes those ripple effects harm people who don't deserve it. If innocent people are getting hurt, you need to adjust. If consequences are spiraling beyond your control, you need to stop. If evidence is emerging that could trace back to you, you need to abort. Third, recognize when revenge is making you worse. Revenge, even strategic revenge, changes you. It requires you to be calculating, manipulative, patient in your cruelty. You need to check in with yourself regularly. Are you becoming someone you don't want to be? Are you enjoying the suffering too much? If yes, you need to stop, because revenge that destroys your own character is not perfect revenge. It's mutual destruction. Fourth, recognize when the target has suffered enough. Have they lost what you intended them to lose? Have they experienced consequences proportional to their actions? If yes, stop. You're not trying to destroy a human being. You're trying to deliver consequences for specific actions. Fifth, recognize when to abandon the mission entirely. Sometimes revenge isn't worth it. Sometimes the risk is too high. Sometimes you realize that moving on would serve you better than continuing to focus on someone who wronged you. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. The strongest move is sometimes to walk away. Finally, prepare for the aftermath. What happens when the revenge is complete? How do you return to normal life? You need an exit strategy. Perfect revenge includes a perfect ending. You achieve your objective. You stop. You walk away. You return to your life. You never speak of what you did. You never gloat. You never reveal. You now possess knowledge that most people will never have. You understand the principles of perfect revenge, the methods that work, the psychological tactics that destroy. This knowledge makes you dangerous, not to others necessarily, to yourself, because now you can see exactly how to hurt people who wrong you. You must resist that temptation. Perfect revenge is not for small offenses. It's not for minor annoyances. It's not for people who simply irritate you. Perfect revenge is reserved for severe betrayals, for people who genuinely harmed you in ways that cannot be addressed through normal channels. Machiavelli wrote about revenge in the context of political betrayals, attempted assassinations, efforts to destroy principalities. These were existential threats. Your situation probably isn't that serious. Your wrong probably can be addressed through normal means. Confrontation, boundaries, cutting people off, legal action, social consequences. Before you deploy perfect revenge, exhaust every other option. Try talking to them. Try setting boundaries. Try cutting them out of your life. Try letting karma work. Try focusing on your own success instead of their destruction. Try forgiveness, not because they deserve it, but because it frees you. Only when all of those options have failed, only when the wrong was severe enough to justify extraordinary measures, only then should you consider perfect revenge. And if you do decide to pursue it, understand what you're committing to. Months or years of patient execution, constant vigilance to maintain invisibility, the moral weight of deliberately harming another human being even if they harmed you first. This is not a light decision. This is something you do after deep reflection, after serious consideration, after accepting the full cost of what you're about to become. Because perfect revenge requires you to become someone calculating, someone patient, someone capable of watching another person suffer and knowing you orchestrated it. Machiavelli's final wisdom was this: it is better to be feared than loved, but it is better still to be so successful that revenge becomes unnecessary. The ultimate power is not the power to destroy your enemies. It's the power to make enemies irrelevant through your own success. Focus on building rather than destroying. Focus on rising rather than pulling others down. Focus on becoming so successful, so powerful, so untouchable that the people who wronged you become footnotes in your story rather than chapters. Perfect revenge is a tool, a nuclear option, a last resort. It exists in your arsenal. You know how to deploy it. You understand the principles. You've learned the methods. But the fact that you can use it doesn't mean you should. Remember, perfect revenge is cold, patient, invisible, indirect, multiplicative, deniable, and self-destructive for the target. It follows these principles, or it isn't perfect. And imperfect revenge is worse than no revenge at all. Your knowledge is complete. Your power is real. Your restraint must be absolute. The choice of what to do with this knowledge is yours alone. Choose wisely.